So the whole fan assembly is supported in a sort of a one-piece bracket. It's the black part that you see here. And the shroud is this zone in this location. I can actually just pull on the base and get the noise. This is the noise we would hear. Of course, you can see that this lower base is attached to the frame, and then the shroud is attached to the frame. So by flexing the refrigerator body, I was able to get the sound to come in and go away. But this is the source. Okay. So I think the problem is that the duct, the shroud panel that you see here, has a tab. You can see it right at the tip of my finger there. And that tab, I think, is supposed to go on this side of the frame. And you'll notice there's a rectangular shaped relief where it's supposed to engage. And of course it doesn't. And you can hear what happens as I move it into position. The tone goes away. Bring it back over here. Tone returns. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to remove the fan, move the shroud over to its place where that tab actually engages. I think this may just simply be a manufacturing assembly error. Okay, so I've taken a close look at this. I think the best way to make the repair, I do believe it was an assembly error. But to do this, I removed the screw from the water solenoid mount. It's just one screw. There's two connectors, an A connector and a B connector, just to get that out of the way. And that allowed me to have access to this shroud. There's a screw at the top. You remove this screw, and what this allows you to do is lay the shroud over. So once this screw is removed, you're going to push the top this way, passing the fan blade through the opening in the middle of the shroud. So you really have to push this thing over to the right quite a bit. What you're looking for is on the bottom of the shroud, there are two blades, and then on the base there's two sockets. One of those blades is over towards the center of the fan, and the other blade is over here by the edge. And then there's a lock tab as well. So what you have to do is you have to lay the whole shroud over, deflect it back. Be careful to not damage your evaporator coils. These the aluminum coils that you see in here, we don't want to damage those. So stay clear of that area. But bend the shroud over, push it to the right, and then you have to, looking from the left, you have to get those two blades to engage their sockets on the base. There's one in the middle, there's one by the edge. And then once you have those engaged in the socket, you have to push on it pretty good, but it's all nylon. It bends, it's very flexible. I don't think there's a risk of breaking it. Then once you have them engaged, you roll the shroud back vertical and then push it down, and you'll hear this tab snap into place. Then you reinstall the screw and mount your solenoid, and I think the problem is solved. Before, you could really move this shroud around quite easily. Now it's very, very rigid. It doesn't really want to move. When I flex it, I'm flexing the whole base structure, so I think that's going to solve our problem. After looking at this closer, I think the problem is actually resonance with the drip pan. This is a one-piece plastic drip pan that the coil assembly is sitting in. The fan is of course attached to it. This is the shroud that we were looking at earlier. When I push on the shroud, you can hear the resonance. If I push far enough, it goes away. Shroud is attached to the pan. We corrected the manufacturing defect where the tabs were not in the notches. I think that's contributed. It actually had a higher frequency component, but even after making that repair, I was still able to hear a pretty good resonant tone. You can even hear it right now. But the pan the drip pan is only attached along this back edge. There's no screws going through the bottom, and so as a result, it's free to oscillate in this plane. And there's nothing under the pan, and the pan is in very close proximity to the metal structure of the refrigerator's lower pan. And then it also is very, very close in this area to metal structure. So what I plan to do is put foam under the bottom of the pan, between the pan and the metal, so between the black plastic and the metal base. And that will have this effect. So if I remove it, I press down, remove it, so I've got a piece of foam. It's actually a piece that is about 6 inches wide by 12 inches long, and I doubled it over to make a 6x6 2-layer thick patch. Got about half of it, I guess, under the tray you can see there, and waiting for the compressor to wake up after plugging the refrigerator back in to test the fix. It's very difficult to get into place. You really need to remove these 2 screws. There's one here, and then there's a second one here. They support the tray. Once that's been they've been removed, the tray floats pretty freely. You want to be careful though, as you slide the tray around. You can lift it a small amount, but you need some sort of a tool to sort of reach around the side of the tray between the compressor and the tray to help slide the foam under. I used a spatula, artist's spatula, looks something like this, and that allowed me to slip in and then push the foam over to get it into position. I don't want to disturb these coils or the plumbing that's connected in the compressor to the coils too much. They are flexible. You can flex them a little bit. Unplug the refrigerator before you start slipping the foam under. Once the foam is under, you want to put the 2 screws back in and then power up. I'm going to cut this excess off before I close. Compressor is back on, and I think most of this problem is resolved. There's one more area to take a look at. So as I pointed out earlier, this entire lower plastic tray is one pan. But what's a little difficult to pick up on is that there's a section in the back of the pan. I'm going to zoom in. This is going to get a little out of hand here for a second, but you'll note that that area, get my pointer in here, right there, that black triangular shaped piece, that actually rises from the rear edge of the pan, of the drip pan, made out of the same material, one piece construction. You note the gap between the hypotenuse of that triangular shape and the sheet metal that you see back there, which forms the exterior shell of the refrigerator. I'm going to zoom out now and take my light out of the way. You'll note the compressor is running right now, and you'll note that the noise is very quiet, and I can come over here and push, and I still get into that resonance. The resonance is not coming from below the pan, because you can see the pan has a double layer of foam, about 6 inches, being pressed beneath it. And so that area that we were just zoomed in on, nice and tight, see if I can get in there again. Lighting's a little different, I've moved my light, but that area right there, where that triangular shaped rear portion of the pan rests, I think is the culprit. And we're going to get in there and try to get a piece of foam May even use a playing card folded in half because it'll be stiff and easier to insert. It's going to be a challenge to reach into that zone. It's pretty easy to look at, but there's a lot of tubing. You don't have a whole lot of space here to get your hands inside of, but we'll work that through and see how it goes. But so I've added the 2 playing cards folded in half between the section and the back of the drip pan that rises, the triangular shape rise in the back. Slipped it between there and the cabinet itself, the aluminum cabinet. I guess it's probably not aluminum. It's probably a galvanized thin sheet steel, is what I would suspect. And then you can see down here by the edge of the bottom, I've got the foam in. I think this has eliminated our problem. I can push on the pan. Not able to find any resonance. I can push on the shroud. I don't hear resonance. I don't know if those card shims are going to stay in place, but we'll see how that goes over time. But this, I believe, is going to eliminate our problem.